Hello again, everyone. I am Chris Scherer, and this is the City Sports Weekly for Wednesday, August 26, 2020. Robert Harding is with us, or with me, and then Justin Ritzel's also, well, not with me, but you know how it is. We've been doing these now for the last almost about 5 months now. So yeah, we haven't done a video together since the second week of March, probably.
In person?
In person, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been that long.
It was I started working from home the week of March 16th. So it was the week before that we did.
Yeah, we need to do one video where the three of us are together, or at least two of us, maybe. We can social distance. There's plenty of room, but hey. All right, let's get right.
Are you feeling lonely there, little Chrissy?
No, I'm not lonely.
Come on.
I'm fine. No,
jeez.
I'm good.
I think Chris is just sick of looking at that wall behind you, Robert.
Oh yeah. Well, I've got one at home kind of like it, so I don't worry about that. So
kind of like it. Wow.
Well, I don't put up all my awards. I've put up a few, but
if you divide mine by 5. Sure.
Okay. Meanwhile, Justin is on the ice planet Hoth. Either the air conditioning in his basement got really cranked up, or it's another clever background image there. It's pretty good, Justin. I got to give you props for the ice planet Hoth, which of course was made famous in the epic summer of 1980 release, The Empire Strikes Back. So,
Chris, I'm just curious if you can name the Star Wars creature that is behind me.
That I could not do. I apologize for that, but
a big sigh from Star Wars fans everywhere that Chris could not properly identify a tauntaun.
Oh, there we go. Well, again, I am a Star Wars fan. I saw all the original movies in the movie theaters back in the day when I was young, and something that neither of you guys can unfortunately say, which,
Well, I saw it when they released, re-released or did the remasters, and it came out in theaters. It had to be, 1997? A couple years before Phantom Menace came out. My grandpa took me to see The Empire Strikes Back, and I actually didn't, because it's a little darker of a Star Wars, obviously. I actually didn't like it as a 6-year-old, but obviously, right. grew to love it. The best Star Wars movie, bar none, in my opinion.
It's a great movie, no doubt about it. So, all right, let's talk sports. All right, so the NFL, they're going through practices. There's no preseason games. This regular season is still expected to start, I believe, on the 10th of September. That's the first game, right? That's the Thursday night game. All right. And my Miami Dolphins made some news this week announcing that they will have fans in the stands for their home games this season, starting against Robert's Buffalo Bills on September 20th. Now, the Dolphins aren't just going to let everybody in the stadium. They're doing a lot of they have a lot of plans to protect people, and they've been working on this since March. So first thing is only 25% of the stadium is going to be allowed, is going to be filled. So that's only 13% of capacity. So I'm sorry, 25%, which is only 13,000. There we go. I got it. So people will have to social distance. You can sit with small groups together. Everybody has to wear a mask at all times except when you're eating or drinking. There's no tailgating. They're staggering people's entrances and exits into the stadium, disinfecting things. There's going to be a lot of stuff that's not going to be open, like water fountains, stuff like that. So the Dolphins, I mean, if you look at this on face value, you might be like, are they crazy? Are they not thinking of fan safety? But if you really look at this, what they've been doing, how they've been preparing for this, arguably you could say that they're taking every precaution that can be taken right now, and that if you want to go, I wouldn't blame you for going. Now, I follow a lot of Dolphin fans on Twitter, including one season ticket holder who goes by the Twitter handle Big E. And Big E is a season ticket holder, and he has been notified that he is on the list to be able to attend games, and he is going. So it's going to be interesting to see when he tweets from these games what it's going to be like, that experience. So my personal opinion is I think depending on the area and the precautions being taken, that NFL games should have some fans if the right precautions are being taken. The Dolphins are doing that, and I think that they're doing the right thing. And if fans want to go, no one's forcing them to. They should be able to go if they follow the rules. I think if people are not following the rules, they're not wearing masks, they're not social distancing, they're doing some stupid things, and you got to kick them out. And maybe this will stop. But for now, I think that the Dolphins are doing the right thing, and I think some other teams should take a lesson from Miami and also allow a very limited amount of fans into their venues. Justin, since I'm looking at you and the ICE plan, I'll let you go first. Your thoughts on this?
Well, it's not surprising at all that a team from Florida is the one that's one of the first to announce they're going to have fans. Obviously, Florida rules are often more lax. It's tough because it's like you're looking at a state that, especially recently, has been hit harder by COVID. And then you have states like New York where it's like, well, in New York, maybe this is a state that actually could have, and obviously, only the Bills are actually playing in New York, as Robert nods his head. But a state like New York, I think, yeah, maybe I don't know if 13,000 is the right number, but maybe there is a number that this could safely be done. Obviously, football stadiums are the most of them can house 55 to 60,000 people. It is possible to social distance. My concern is that once you let these people into the stadiums and developing plans, mandating masks and stuff, that's all well and good, but how are you going to police 13,000 people while a game is going on? There's only so many ushers or guards that you can have come in, and there's only so many eyes to look at people and make sure they're following the rules. I think that's walking down a slippery slope. And that the NFL, we can say that they should have a uniform policy, but unfortunately they're kind of, either they say no one can have fans for however many weeks, or they have to kind of just let each team decide on their own, because each state has different rules as far as large social gatherings right now. So like I said, Florida, they're a little more lax right now. Other states like New York, a little more strict. I'm really curious for the stadiums that do not allow fans right away, which includes Robert's Bills, it includes my Green Bay Packers, how they handle the fake crowd noise, because there's been some chatter about that, on how much noise is too much noise. So we'll see. It's an odd situation. Part of me wishes they would have just said no fans for anybody for the first 4 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever, just kind of eliminate the decision making from individual teams, but that's not the way the NFL went. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully it gets handled safely.
Now we'll see. All right, Robert, your thoughts.
I like how you skipped me in favor of Ritz to, delay the tongue lashing.
What? Okay.
Quite obvious, I think, to our loyal viewers that you were obviously ducking the abuse that's coming your way. Look, Florida, I just looked up the stats. They had 3,000 new cases in the last 24 hours. 153 people have died. And if you want a comparison, looking at Florida, New York, we have around the same population, although Florida's a little bit bigger these days. New York had 566 new cases yesterday and 3 deaths. So this idea that, Florida is somehow ready to not only host fans, but thousands of fans in a stadium like that is just absurd. And I'm not saying this because it's the Dolphins and the Bills. Look, no, I'm not worried about that bum team anyway. The Bills, they could pack the stadium. Bills are going to win that game, okay? I'm not worried about that. I'm looking at the health aspect of it and the fact that it seems, some teams are taking a more serious approach to this. Other teams are taking a more shall we say, advantageous approach to this, that they see an opportunity to let some fans in. I think it's a mistake. I think that, the Bills are taking an approach where, their first 2 home games, they're not going to have fans. And I think it's a smart wait and see approach because look, and we're going to talk about another level of football later, but football's the untested sport here. We've seen baseball, we've seen hockey, and obviously basketball. Those two are a little bit different because they're in bubbles, obviously. But first of all, we don't know how this is going to play out with football players, and now you add the fan element to it, where now you're really talking about a wild card, multiple wild cards, because you don't know where any of these people have been, and they're going to be coming into the stadium. Well, and all it takes is one.
No, you're right.
And with this, I think the NFL made a mistake by not having a uniform policy, because I think that would have been the smarter approach. Come out and say, look, for the month of September, no fans at your home games, period. And then, as we go through, as we get closer to October, you can make some decisions. Look, I know that they've already distributed the season tickets and stuff. And if you're going to let people go to games, they'll buy up the tickets. I don't think that's going to be a problem with timing or whatever, as long as you give them a few weeks. But I think you really need to see how this, plays out on the field first with these players before you start even thinking about letting fans in, because there might not even be games to be played.
And that's the thing, yes.
But look, I'm not surprised that Miami, of all teams, would be out there saying, oh, let's let some fans in. I will say, Chris, to let your bum team off the slack, Kansas City is letting fans in, I believe, for their season opener. Dallas, too, yeah. Shocker, Jerry Jones. Yeah, what a smart guy he is. But with the Dolphins, look, Florida's one of the hotbeds right now. I mean, I'm sure people will look at this and say, oh, 3,000 cases in a day. What's the big deal? 150 deaths in a day. What's the big deal? New York was much worse than that at its peak. True. But Florida has been at this level for a while now. And it's, it seems like it's slowly getting better. But when you're still losing 150 people a day, that's pretty serious. So I don't see how you can look at it and say, oh, yeah, sure, let's open up a stadium and let thousands of people in, whether it's 13,000 or 130,000, doesn't matter. That's still pretty risky. That's 13,000 people in a limited area, and you can space out all you want, but there's only so many bathrooms, there's only so many concession stands. This could be a problem. Maybe it works out, and I hope it does, because I really, as the season progresses, I would love to see, all teams have fans in the stands, because it's just been weird watching sports without them. But this is a pandemic. These are not normal times, and I think that's really something that people have to remember, is that this isn't a normal thing that we're going through. This requires some unusual steps. And, I know that people like to say, oh, liberty, oh, this, oh, that. This is a totally different thing than we've ever dealt with. This isn't 9/11. This isn't anything else. This is a serious thing. And, you got to be really careful with it, or else you're going to have more people getting sick and more losses of life.
Robert, I do agree with you. I do agree with that. This is unprecedented times, and we don't know what's going to happen and everything. And but I will throw this out at you. I mean, look, as we both know, Florida and New York are pretty big states, and different regions. Upstate, we've been very fortunate. We haven't as many cases as downstate in the city in Long Island and Westchester County. Erie County has been, had a decent number at one time, but it's gone down. And I understand that, hey, South Florida's had a good number of cases too. I'm not trying to say, oh yeah, South Florida's doing great and the rest of Florida is the ones that are having the issues. No, there's been a lot of cases in South Florida too. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that the NFL should say, look, we're no fans in the stands for the first month of the season, and let's see how things go. But I think it will be interesting to see what happens with the Dolphins, the Chiefs, the Cowboys, and any other team that decides to let fans in. will we get an outbreak? Will this be connected to these games by the end of September, when we get a month of the season, and what happens? And of course, again, will we have a season? I mean, the NFL, knock on wood, to our knowledge, has been solid that they've not had any major outbreaks affecting teams. I mean, baseball, as we know, the Marlins, the Cardinals have had large numbers of cases. The Mets had a couple and they had to scrub their games. So the NFL, the players maybe seem to be getting it better than MLB, and we don't have a large number of positives. So I think that'll play a role in it too, because I know, look, we both know the NFL is going to play through hell or high water. Don't matter. They're going to be playing. They got too much money on the table to not play. Lives be damned, unfortunately. But anyways, we'll see what happens. All right. We're going to stay with the NFL. Former player Emmanuel Acho, if I said that right, interviewed Commissioner Roger Goodell about race issues in the NFL. And the commissioner talked about kneeling during the national anthem. And I think the big thing that I got out of it is that he said that, Colin Kaepernick was right, that, the NFL failed him, or the NFL didn't do enough to help him, or just wasn't there to support him during the kneeling during the national anthem. Now, it's easy to be, the old saying, hindsight vision is 20/20. I get that. But I mean, I think it rings hollow. I mean, maybe Goodell means well. I'm not saying that he doesn't, but this is all like after the fact now. It's easy to say these things now, everything that's happened in this country over the last, 3 months. So I think if Roger Goodell really wanted to show that he gets it, or that he's taking things differently, is that Colin Kaepernick is on a roster right now in someone's training camp. Or if you really want to get crazy, the league should hire him in some type of role for social justice. Now, I know that would really create an uproar with a lot of people in this country. Okay. But that being said, if the NFL really wants to show that they're serious about or treatment of African Americans in this country, then let's get Colin Kaepernick either on the field or another type of capacity where the NFL shows that it actually does, these things actually mean to them. We'll see what happens. I'm going to be very curious what happens week 1 when they play the national anthem, how many players are going to kneel, and what the reaction is going to be, especially since we're, in the middle of a presidential election here. Robert, you get to go first on this one. Your thoughts?
Oh, look at this. I'm not surprised. Well, shout out to Ritz, because I did see this come across my Twitter feed, the interview, and I didn't watch it when I saw it. It was one of those things I wanted to come back to, and he mentioned it as a possible topic. So that here we are. Look, I thought it was fascinating stuff, because on a couple of fronts, for a couple of reasons. One is the obvious, discussion about Kaepernick and obviously that situation. But what I found the most interesting was the revelation that statement he made a few months ago about Black Lives Matter and post George Floyd, and that it was much talked about because it was obviously shot from his famous basement where he did the draft. And he said in this interview that he didn't talk to the owners about that. And I thought that was certainly noteworthy because so much of this, as we know, with professional sports and commissioners, their bosses are the owners. And with the NFL, many of the owners have, I think it's fair to say, their support isn't exactly strong support when it comes to a lot of these issues. They make a good PR move out of it, but that's about it. And some of them politically, their views don't align with their players. So for Goodell to come out and do this and do it without consulting with the owners, I thought was certainly newsworthy, and to make that statement. But yeah, I mean, obviously there were mistakes made here. He was asked in that interview about, would players be penalized? How would the league react to the question you asked, Chris, about players taking a knee during the national anthem? And Goodell seemed to put to rest that they wouldn't be penalized or anything. He really wanted to focus on the point that this isn't about the military or hating the country or something stupid like that. There's a bigger, more important message there, and that seems to be Goodell understands that now, it seems. But actions speak louder than words. So we'll see what happens as things progress here.
Justin, go ahead.
Anyone who's either watched this video or used to listen to our NFL podcast knows that none of us here are shy about throwing shade towards Roger Goodell or criticizing him or dunking on him when he does something wrong. And I think we all know that his tenure as NFL commissioner has been turbulent, to say the least. But Chris, I think you're being a little unfair to Goodell in your comment that somewhat, that he has some role, or he should have some role in Colin Kaepernick being on a team, because as Robert said, ultimately, he is not an owner. He is not a general manager. He is the commissioner. And it is up to these owners and these general managers who have more say in roster construction. It's on them. Roger Goodell could meet with the owners and strongly encourage, hey guys, this guy's, he's whether you like him or not, at one point he was one of the biggest stars in the NFL. So he can encourage them to say, to maybe.
Well, that's what I mean. Then that's what I mean to encourage. I'm not saying that he can order a team to sign, obviously. I'm talking about, hey, look, I'm encouraging you to at least look into this guy, bring him in for a tryout at least. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so
I'm not saying, okay, he should be signed.
He can say that all he wants, but I think we all know that and maybe those conversations did happen. We were not in the meetings. We don't know exactly what was said. Obviously, it fell on deaf ears because he has been unemployed for 3 years, as far as being an NFL quarterback. As far as Roger Goodell, I got to admit, part of me, like Chris said, there's a little like a voice in the back of my head saying like, this isn't genuine. This doesn't align with kind of how the NFL's handled this thing over the last few years. That and as he said in the video, the NFL never disciplined, as far as suspensions or whatever. They never disciplined anyone for taking a knee during the anthem. There was no sorts of discipline, but they also kind of didn't support their players either, which I think is a big problem. And he acknowledged that maybe, that's something we should have done. Roger Goodell, like I said, very up and down tenure as commissioner, a lot of issues, whether it be with the NFL rules, with his power as far as suspending players for various issues. I think there's a lot of warranted criticism there, but it's really nice, whether it be him hosting the draft from his basement, or now these comments where, you get to see a little more of a human side from him. He talked about his dad, who was a former United States Senator. He talked about his nephew. His brother adopted a black person who is Roger Goodell's nephew. That's something I didn't know, and I don't think he's talked about publicly. So it was just nice to see that human side of him come out. I hope it continues. I don't think Roger Goodell is a bad person. I've never thought that. I thought he might be in over his head as far as being commissioner, but we'll see what happens now. Like Robert said, it's one thing to say the right things, and I think so far this year or these last few months, he's more or less done that. Now the NFL needs to back it up. So it's a step in the right direction. I want to see more of it.
All right. Our last topic. High school sports. Our Governor Cuomo announced a couple days ago that low-risk sports such as cross country, field hockey, tennis, was soccer included on that list, I
Yes.
believe? Okay. Can begin practices and games on September 21st, but no football. Although football teams can practice, there are no games permitted. So first of all, speaking as a former high school football player, and of course a very bad one at that, I would not want to have to practice and not be able to play a game. I think that would be disappointing. That the games are the reward for the practice. Okay. That being said, I'm sure some teams will have practices, to get their kids into shape and get ready for whenever there are games. But that being said, last week I did write that certain sports should be permitted to play because they are, you can social distance, so there's not much, close proximity between the competitors, things like golf, tennis, cross country, and I'm glad that they're going to do that. Now, nothing has been set in stone yet. We're still waiting for the New York State Public High School Athletic Association to issue guidelines for fall season, but I think they should try play some spring football. I think that would be a great compromise in some ways. It is disappointing they can't play in the fall. I would love to see them play in the fall, but again, I think it's still too early for a sport like football. So let's try it in the spring. You could start in late March and play through the middle of May. A little weird, but I think for those kids, especially the seniors, they deserve that chance to at least have some type of effort made so that they can play. Justin, you are our high school sports writer. Go ahead and let me know what your thoughts are about this.
Yeah, so I think this is one step in a long process of getting high school sports back. Obviously, for the low risk or moderate risk sports that are allowed to come back, this is great news. There's still a long way to go. Schools still do have to reopen. There's a lot of schools still navigating on how that's going to work. This could all be a moot point if schools reopen and then you start seeing any kind of spike or outbreak or kids getting sick. September 21st, as one of the coaches I talked to for my story the other day, is still a very, very long time away. It's almost a month away. A lot can happen. As far as football, because, while obviously we cover a lot of these other sports a lot, there's a lot of great athletes in these other sports. Football is the top dog in the fall. And I think that's the sport that most people were curious how that was going to happen. And I just really hope, kind of for the reason that you said, Chris, I really hope that when September 21st does come around, that they make a decision. Is football happening in the fall or not? Because again, as a coach told me for my story, football is not one of those sports like field hockey or soccer to an extent, where you can practice for a couple days and then you could play a game. There's so much that goes into preparing, whether it be making sure the kids are in physical shape, making sure they're in mental shape, learning the playbook, learning the plays. There's so much that goes into it that you cannot pick up a football and be ready to play a game in a couple days. It is, I would imagine at least a week with the kids together, if not more. So looking at that September 21st date, just trying to put some pieces together and guess how long it would take after that to possibly play games. You're probably looking at the middle of October if we're being the absolute most optimistic, which Governor Cuomo has been very patient with a lot of things. And that's probably an outlandish date as it is. And at that point, you get into late November or middle or late October, and you're trying to start playing games. With the weather in New York, with a lot of these grass fields that especially small schools use, how many games can you realistically get in to have any semblance of a season? So I think that's something that needs to be considered. Frankly, I wish they would have just made a decision on football now, because all these football players, you're kind of giving them that hope that there's going to be football. And then what happens if they can't play games in the fall? Not only did they prepare for nothing in a sense, but you're robbing them of an opportunity to maybe go play another sport that is allowed right now. If if a football player wants to go run cross country or bolster the cross country team or go play soccer this fall, well, now you're kind of robbing them of that opportunity to do that. And come September 21st, if there's still not a decision made, it might be too late. So we'll see. Again, this was step one. There's many more steps to go. As the high school sports reporter at the Citizen, obviously I am happy that I will hopefully have something to cover in a month. But we'll see. It's going to be really interesting what happens with football. And to piggyback on that, winter sports are not going to be too far behind. Winter sports generally start practicing
Mid-November.
early mid-November for some teams. And those sports are indoors, and that's a whole other beast. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's interesting times for sure. And a lot more news I'm sure will be coming out in the next coming days, coming weeks.
Robert, the floor is yours.
Yeah, covering this announcement, and I know Justin covered the sports side of it, but this is a bit of a dilemma that we find ourselves in, because obviously you play school sports within the confines, if you will, of the academic calendar, and so you have to fit all of this in between September and June. And I know that there's talk of, okay, well, if you don't do a fall season, then do this kind of truncated schedule where it goes from January to June. I mean, that's ambitious, because you're going to try and fit basically every season, it sounds like, into that period, which would certainly be challenging, especially for kids who play a sport each of those seasons. That's a 6-month sprint, as opposed to a usual 9-month with some breaks built in there, depending on how good your team is, I suppose. But the football question specifically is challenging. I think it's interesting to me, as Justin mentioned, the Bills are the only NFL team in New York, and with this situation that we're in, the Bills are going to be playing football games in New York. Granted, there won't be fans there, but they are permitted to play. Whereas and in college football as well. But with high school football, they're told that they can't play. I can see why that would bother them. I'll go back to what I said earlier, which is that we just don't know with football. It's obviously a much different sport than basketball, baseball, and hockey. You're talking about a full contact sport. They're tackling each other. They're lining up on the line of scrimmage close to each other. So this isn't a sport that really is made for this time. That said, if the numbers are good, how quickly could they pick this up? Now, this question came up during Governor Cuomo's call today about football specifically, and the answer was basically that there will be some decision about football before September 21st, because they want to give time so that you can do that. Now, to Justin's point, football is a much different sport, and you're talking about learning playbooks and all this other stuff. And, so how quickly can you play? And I agree with him. It's not going to be until well into October. So then what kind of season are you going to get out of that? I know that there's talk about spring football. It would be interesting to see that in this part of the country. But, I think at the end of the day, they need to come up with a fall solution. But if they go with the 6-month schedule, it'll be interesting to see how that works too. But I'll also go back to what I said earlier, which is this is an unusual time. I know that there's a lot of talk about, it's not fair to the kids. Well, it's not fair to anybody.
No.
Okay. It's not just affecting high school kids. And I know that a lot of people make it seem like they're, victims of this. Look, there's a lot of people in worse shape than high school seniors. Okay. And I do feel for them, but at the same time, you have to realize the times that we're in and why we're in this situation, for one, but also, the reality of this, that, there are more important things than sports. And if we can do them safely, great. If not, well, let's not put, especially the players, and that's something that gets lost even with the pro sports ranks. Don't put the players in a position. They're the ones that are going to be out there, not the coaches, not the owners or the athletic directors or whatever level of sports that you want to talk about. The players are going to be out there, and they're the ones that are going to be putting themselves at risk. Is it worth it? Because all it takes is one. And I know that when I talked about this on Twitter before, I received some replies like, oh, well, our numbers in this part of the state are good. And that's true. Compared to Miami, who's allowing fans in the stands, we're doing great. But all it takes is one, as we've seen in some other parts of the state. There are some clusters that exist. All it takes is one case, and then you have a problem. Then you have, if it's connected to a game, and these aren't just, hypothetical scenarios. I mean, we've seen cases reported in schools across the country that have opened up. I think Florida's thousands of kids in Florida have tested positive. I believe the number came out as since they opened up schools. So, it's something that you have to be careful with because, again, there's more to life than high school sports. Most of these kids aren't going to go on to play in college. Most of them aren't going to go to play. Nearly all of them, almost all of them, aren't going to play pro. So at the end of the day, yes, this stinks, but at least you'll have your health, which is really the most important thing. Right. And, it's sad that we have to talk about it in this way because, look, I've been there. First of all, don't know why soccer's on that, on the low risk list. I clearly never saw how I played soccer. I didn't stand 6 feet away from my opponent. That's for damn sure. But, I just think that, you have to put things in the proper perspective. I hope the adults realize that, to communicate that to the kids. It seems like there's certainly some conflict about that as well. But, I get it. It's frustrating, but again, this isn't something that we should toy with. Our numbers are good because we've been doing all of these things. So to just say, oh, well, let's, do this, do that, play sports, whatever, okay, but what precautions are going to be there? And, for athletes, maybe there are some measures that they're willing to take. What about testing? I mean, I think that would put a lot of people at ease if there was some sort of testing protocol, even at the high school level, where, you say, yeah, we're willing to get tested, every week, game week, and then go from there. And that way you prevent, possible scenarios where, you have spread between schools. But, I just think that there needs to be more thought put into it and, considering the real world ramifications before we just rush into something.
All right, folks, that's going to be it. We're going to wrap it up.
Hold on, Chris. Hold on.
All right, Justin, go ahead.
He does this every week.
Yeah, go ahead. Get the last word in. Go ahead.
Well, I think there's a couple important notes or news nuggets that came out over the last couple hours that are worth mentioning. First off, Section 8, which is Nassau County, has already decided to push all high school sports back to January. So they will not have fall sports, and winter sports will be delayed. We know that for certain. And then Newsday did a follow-up report to that, saying, obviously since Cuomo's announcement about certain sports being able to come back September 21st, a lot of these section leaders and state officers that run high school sports, they've been meeting over the last couple of days, and Newsday reported that several other sections are also considering pushing back high school sports to January, Section 3 being one of them, which several of our school districts are part of, Section 3. And then I was just scrolling through Twitter a couple minutes ago, and the Democrat and Chronicle is reporting that I want to make sure I get this right, the New York State Council of School Superintendents just sent a letter to Governor Cuomo requesting that all high school sports in New York State be pushed back to January. Like I said, this is an evolving situation. Monday's news was great, and there's light at the end of the tunnel, certainly. But I don't think we can sit here and say that for sure. There will be sports come September 21st. A lot can change.
No, I agree with you, and it's a very fluid situation. And again, continue things. Not going to be having kids in the school year. There's still going to be distance learning. And I think that's a major thing, is that how can you have distance learning and then have high school sports? I mean, you want the kids in the building if you're going to actually have high school sports. They're kind of, I wouldn't say they're completely interlocked, but I think that there is some type of point that you can make that, if the kids if it isn't safe for the kids to be in the school buildings, is it safe enough for them to play sports? And again, I will say, I think there are certain sports that you can play, and there is no huge risk of these kids getting ill, or more importantly, catching it and spreading it to their parents or grandparents or any other older people. So, all right, guys, are we all done now, or do you want to continue on?
Well, Chris, you cut out for probably 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds. So I'm just going to assume that you said Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback ever, and Dan Marino stinks and couldn't win the big game. I'm just going to assume that's what you said.
No, that was not it. No. I think the experience on the planet Hoth is frozen your brain. No, that's not the case. So,
well, I know one of the two quarterbacks I mentioned has a Super Bowl ring and multiple.
That's true.
And the guy who played in Florida.
Yeah, I get you. All right, hey, go ahead, take shot to Marino. Hey, whatever.
Why beat a dead horse?
Yeah. Well, all right. We ready to wrap it up, guys?
Well, just one more point to piggyback on what Rich said, because I did see that letter from the Council of School Superintendents, and I think their main concern is that we don't know how a lot of schools are doing different things. This is we talk about the NFL and the fans. Let's talk about the school districts in New York that, it seems like you can look at, even just in our area, everybody's taking kind of a different approach. Some schools are going, we're letting in-person classes resume 5 days a week. Others are doing a hybrid model, distance learning. So I think they're waiting to see, especially those that have some sort of in-person component, how is that going to work? And can we do it safely? And, look, they didn't do this in the spring. They just shut down the schools and they flipped to distance learning. So I think that from the superintendent's perspective, I think what they're saying, and I haven't read the full letter, but I read part of it. I think their big point is, let's wait and see, and then let's talk about sports, because we don't know how this is going to work. And I think the concern is there that, what happens if you get a case or a few cases, and then it turns into a cluster. How do you handle that? And then you mixed in the sports thing, and it just adds more that you have to address. And it's obviously not an ideal situation if that happens.
Okay, now we're going to wrap it up. I appreciate everybody for joining us this week. We do appreciate your viewership, and hey, hopefully things will continue to get better, and we'll see you next week.